In the twilight of her life, Loretta Lynn said something that stunned those around her. While recording what would become her final studio album, inside Johnny Cash's historic cabin studio, she saw someone, that shook her to the core. Loretta claimed she saw Johnny, not a memory, not a symbol, a man in gray, standing in the studio doorway. And when she told people what happened next, the room fell silent. Before the awards, before the albums, before she ever set foot on the Grand Ole Opry stage, Loretta Lynn was just a coal miner's daughter, born into a world most country stars never knew, and few ever survived. She grew up in Butcher Hollow, Kentucky. A hollow so isolated it didn't appear on many maps. Her family lived in a cramped log cabin with no electricity, no running water, and no insulation against the bitter Appalachian winters. There were 8 children, 1 bed, and not nearly enough food. Her father, Melvin "Ted" Webb, was a coal miner who worked long, dangerous hours underground to provide what little he could. Scrip money, the kind only usable at company stores, kept families like Loretta's trapped in a cycle of poverty. They couldn't leave, couldn't save, couldn't dream. In interviews, Loretta often said, "We were poor, but we didn't know it." But the truth was, she knew. They all did. When Loretta was just a child, she suffered a severe ear infection. With no access to proper care, doctors drilled into her skull to relieve the pressure. A brutal, archaic procedure done without modern anesthesia. Her mother couldn't stay at the hospital, so she walked 10 miles each day just to sit by her daughter's side. Later, a leg infection nearly took her life. There was no ambulance, no insurance, just grit, faith, and prayer. Music wasn't a career goal. It was an escape. Loretta began singing lullabies to her younger siblings on the front porch, her voice echoing through the hollers and across the tree-covered hills. Neighbors working in the fields would stop to listen. She didn't have a microphone. She didn't need one. Her voice cut through everything: poverty, silence, pain, and made people pause. There was no guitar in the house, no piano, just Loretta's voice and the sounds of wind, crickets, and coal trains rumbling in the distance. That became her first band. The Holler was her first stage. And while Nashville was 1,000 miles away, culturally, emotionally, financially, Loretta Lynn was already becoming something powerful. In Butcher Hollow, she wasn't a star. She was a survivor. But in that survival, a sound was forming, one that would soon echo across the world. Before the awards, before the albums, before she ever set foot on the Grand Ole Opry stage, and while Nashville was 1,000 miles away, culturally, emotionally, financially, Loretta Lynn was already becoming something powerful. In Butcher Hollow, she wasn't a star. She was a survivor. But in that survival, a sound was forming, one that would soon echo across the world. Loretta Lynn's life changed forever when she met Oliver "Doolittle" Lynn. He was 21. She was barely 15. By today's standards, it's a disturbing reality. But in rural Kentucky in the 1940s, early marriages were common, especially when poverty and limited options shaped every decision. Loretta would later claim she was just 13 when they wed, though official records put her at 15. Either way, she was a child, and Doolittle, he was about to shape the rest of her life, for better, and for far worse. From the beginning, their marriage was a storm. On their wedding night, Doo hit her over a harmless comment. It wouldn't be the last time. The marriage was marked by domestic violence, drinking, infidelity, and long disappearances. Doolittle was wild, volatile, and unfaithful. He vanished for days at a time. He spent money recklessly. He picked fights in bars, and when Loretta confronted him, he hit her. But she hit back. "If he hit me, I hit him right back," she once said in an interview. "I wasn't about to be a doormat." It wasn't bravado. It was survival. Loretta endured, not because she was weak, but because she believed in vows, in family, in holding things together for her children. They would go on to have 6 kids together, but those early years were filled with instability. Doolittle would disappear to chase work or women, leaving Loretta alone to care for babies, boil laundry in metal tubs, and scrape together meals from whatever she could find. And yet, despite all of it, he saw something in her that she didn't yet see in herself. He bought her a $17 guitar from a Sears catalog. He told her to start singing at local honky-tonks. He pushed her onto tiny radio stations, helped book her first shows, and told anyone who would listen, "This girl's got something." Her career was born from that unlikely partnership, but the scars remained. Many of Loretta's most iconic songs came from this painful union. "Fist City," "Don't Come Home a-Drinkin'," "You Ain't Woman Enough." They weren't metaphors, they were journal entries set to music. And while she never sugarcoated their marriage, she never walked away from it either. Through decades of pain, betrayal, and brief moments of joy, she stayed. To the world, Doolittle was the man who launched her. To Loretta, he was both her greatest burden and her strangest blessing. By the age of 22, Loretta Lynn had already lived through more than most women twice her age. She was raising 4 children under the age of 5, often alone, in a home with no running water and barely enough food to make it through the week. Her husband, Doolittle Lynn, was either working odd jobs or disappearing on drinking binges. He'd be gone for days, sometimes weeks, leaving Loretta to run the household, calm crying babies, and survive on sheer willpower. Motherhood for Loretta wasn't just exhausting, it was dangerous. The weight of constant pregnancies took a toll on her young body. She suffered multiple miscarriages. One nearly killed her. With no hospital close enough and no money for doctors, Loretta was often forced to recover at home, alone, in silence. After giving birth to her 3rd child, she developed a severe infection that could have ended her life. Doolittle was nowhere to be found. She lay there feverish and hallucinating, with her children huddled around her, unsure if their mother was going to survive. During one particularly desperate stretch, the family had so little food that Loretta survived on boiled dandelion greens for nearly 2 weeks. She'd pick them from the side of the road and serve them to her kids like it was a feast. She didn't cry. She didn't complain. She just endured. Because in her world, there was no other choice. These experiences weren't footnotes in her life. They became the fuel for her music. Every time Loretta sang about exhaustion, about heartbreak, about being pushed too far, she was speaking from the deepest part of that life. Where music wasn't a hobby, it was therapy. Even after her career began to take off, motherhood never left the center of her world. When her twins arrived later in life, Loretta was already touring, juggling stardom with bottles, diapers, and the aching pain of leaving her kids behind to chase opportunity. She spoke openly about the guilt, the depression, the ache of watching her babies grow up from the window of a tour bus. Still, she kept singing, because every mile traveled, every stage conquered, every check earned was for them. Loretta Lynn wasn't just a mother. She was a warrior in an apron, a woman who held her children with one arm, a guitar in the other, and the weight of the world on her back. And somehow, she never let it crush her. Loretta Lynn didn't write songs to sell records. She wrote them to survive. Every lyric she penned, every melody she carried, came straight from the trenches of a hard, unsparing life. She didn't need to invent characters or borrow someone else's story. She was the story. In 1967, she released a song that changed everything. Don't Come Home A-Drinkin', with lovin' on your mind. It was a defiant message to a drunk husband, and it wasn't fiction. It was her life with Doolittle Lynn, distilled into 2 verses and a chorus. The song exploded. It became the first number, 1 country hit by a solo female artist, and it proved, maybe for the first time, that women wanted to hear the truth sung back to them. Radio DJs were divided. Some refused to play it. Others called it disrespectful, even dangerous. But the women listening? They heard themselves in every line. Loretta wasn't just singing to them, she was singing for them. She followed it up with Fist City, a warning shot aimed at any woman who looked twice at her husband. It was raw, angry, protective. You better move your feet if you don't want to eat a meal that's called Fist City, she growled. Again, it wasn't fiction. It was a lyrical snapshot of real-life betrayal and her refusal to be a victim. Then came Rated X, The Pill, One's on the Way, songs about divorce, birth control, unwanted pregnancies, and the exhausting double standards women faced. Loretta sang about topics no one else dared touch. She didn't wrap them in metaphors or soften the message. She said it plain. She said it loud. And every time they tried to silence her, she just got louder. Over 60 radio stations banned The Pill when it dropped in 1975. Too controversial, too bold. But it still climbed the charts. Women across America were singing it under their breath, behind closed doors, in quiet rebellion. Loretta's genius wasn't just in what she said. It was when she said it. In a time when women were expected to stand still and smile, she stood up and roared. Her pain wasn't her weakness. It was her weapon, and she wielded it in every single song. In 1984, the unthinkable happened. Loretta Lynn, a woman who had faced poverty, abuse, exhaustion, and controversy, now faced the most devastating blow of all. Her son, Jack Benny Lynn, was dead. And no chart-topping hit, no award, no spotlight could shield her from that kind of pain. Jack was just 34 years old. A former wild child, full of spirit and stubbornness, traits he inherited from both parents. He had begun to calm down in recent years, settling into life on the family ranch in Hurricane Mills, Tennessee. But on that day, Jack saddled up a horse and rode toward the Duck River, a stretch of water on the property known for strong currents and hidden dangers. No one knows exactly what happened next. Some say the horse stumbled. Others believe Jack may have lost his footing while crossing. What's known is this: Jack was thrown into the river. His horse returned alone. His body was found hours later downstream, face down in the water. Gone. At the time of the accident, Loretta wasn't home. She was in Illinois, hospitalized for exhaustion, worn down by years of touring and grief she hadn't yet spoken aloud. When Doolittle Lynn gave her the news, she collapsed. The strength that had carried her through decades of hardship finally gave way. Jack wasn't just her son. He was her protector, her mirror, the one who understood the storm inside her better than anyone else. They shared the same fire, and now that fire had been extinguished. Loretta never fully recovered. She returned to the stage, eventually. She smiled for cameras. She gave interviews. But something inside her had changed. The music softened. The fight dulled. the edges blurred. She never wrote a hit about Jack. But if you listen closely to her later records, you can hear him. In the pauses, in the sadness behind the lyrics, in the quiet tremble of a voice that once shook buildings. Grief didn't make her louder, it made her quieter. And yet, even in mourning, Loretta showed the world something powerful. That true strength isn't just surviving the pain, it's carrying it with you, song after song, for the rest of your life. Loretta Lynn was many things: a singer, a mother, a fighter, and a pioneer. But she was also something else entirely, a believer in things the world couldn't explain. Her home in Hurricane Mills, Tennessee, wasn't just a ranch. It was a living, breathing relic of Civil War history. And, according to Loretta, it was haunted. And she didn't just mean creaky floors or bumps in the night. She meant full apparitions, spirits, ghosts who walked the halls as if they never left. Loretta spoke of seeing Confederate soldiers in full uniform, pacing through empty rooms, doors that slammed on their own, furniture that moved, whispers in the dark. She didn't sensationalize these stories for attention. She simply stated them as fact. "They're here," she once said, "but they don't bother me." Even her children backed up the claims. They recalled eerie sightings, unexplained footsteps, lights flickering without cause. The family grew used to it. Some of them feared it. But Loretta accepted it, almost as if she expected it, as if the veil between this world and the next had always been thinner for her. These weren't just stories told by candlelight. They were part of her music. Songs like "This Haunted House" and "Who's Gonna Miss Me" were laced with an eerie beauty, exploring death, absence, and the lingering presence of those who've passed on. She didn't sing about ghosts like a gimmick. She sang about them like they were old friends. And maybe, to her, they were. Loretta often said she felt things before they happened. She would dream of loved ones just before their deaths. She'd get a strange feeling before receiving bad news. When her son Jack died, she later admitted she felt something was wrong long before the phone call came. A chill, a stillness, a knowing. As she got older, those experiences became more frequent and more vivid. People around her would laugh nervously when she told the stories, but Loretta never laughed. She looked them in the eye and said, "Just because you haven't seen it doesn't mean it ain't there." To some, these were just ghost stories. To Loretta, they were as real as the songs she sang. And as her life wound down, it was clear she no longer feared what was on the other side. Because she'd already been talking to it for years. It was late in her life, after the strokes, after the hospital stays, after the music world had already begun to whisper about Loretta Lynn in past tense. But Loretta wasn't finished. She was recording again. And she chose a studio that meant something: the Cabin, Johnny Cash's personal recording space in Hendersonville, Tennessee. The studio itself was sacred ground. Built by Johnny in 1978, it had become a quiet sanctuary for artists seeking something real. Loretta had always felt a connection to Johnny, through music, through loss, through the burdens of fame neither of them ever asked for. And now, she was standing in his space, singing into the same walls that once held his voice. And then, something happened. During a recording session for her Grammy-nominated album Full Circle, Loretta froze. Mid-song, mid-breath. She looked toward the doorway and turned pale. Those in the studio didn't know what was wrong at first. She didn't say a word, just stared. Finally, she whispered, "Johnny." She told them she saw a man standing in the door, not a shadow, not a trick of the light. A man in a gray suit, tall, still, watching. She swore it was Johnny Cash. The face, the posture, even the faint gleam from his belt buckle, gone in a blink. People in the room were stunned. Some thought she was hallucinating. Others, who had worked with her for years, said, "No, this was different." Loretta wasn't confused. She wasn't dramatic. She believed what she saw. She later told her daughter, "He came to check on me." Just one last time. For Loretta, it wasn't frightening. It was comforting. Johnny and June had always been warm presences in her life, and seeing him in that moment didn't feel like a ghost story. It felt like a goodbye, a silent acknowledgement, one legend to another. The event was never widely publicized. It wasn't turned into a song. Loretta didn't seek headlines. She simply told the story and left it there. But those who were in the room never forgot it. And in the years since, the legend has only grown. What did she really see that day? Was it memory, spirit, or something else altogether? Loretta never tried to explain it. She didn't need to. She'd spent a lifetime walking between two worlds, one of pain and one of purpose. Maybe, in that studio, Johnny came back to walk with her. One last time. Loretta Lynn didn't fade quietly. Even as her body began to slow, her voice never lost its fire. In her final years, after strokes, a broken hip, and the kind of grief most people wouldn't survive, she did what she'd always done. She went back to the studio, back to the truth. Her 2021 album, Still Woman Enough, was more than a record. It was a declaration. Produced by her daughter, Patsy Lynn, and Johnny Cash's son, John Carter Cash, the album brought together generations of women in country music. Carrie Underwood, Reba McEntire, Tanya Tucker, Margot Price. Not to replace Loretta, but to honor her, to sing with her, to carry her torch without dimming its light. She re-recorded her classics. She told her story again. She reminded the world that strength doesn't fade with age. It sharpens. Even as her health declined, Loretta's spirit stayed stubborn, proud, and unshakable. She didn't ask for sympathy. She asked for a mic. On October 4th, 2022, Loretta Lynn passed away peacefully in her sleep at her beloved ranch in Hurricane Mills. She was 90 years old. The woman who sang about cheating husbands, birth control, and battered hearts had outlived them all. Her death was quiet, but her life had been thunder. And the tributes rolled in. The Grand Ole Opry, the same institution that once hesitated to play her boldest songs, led the nation in mourning. Artists flooded social media with memories. Fans made pilgrimages to her ranch. And just 3 years later, when the Opry celebrated its 100th anniversary in 2025, Loretta's name was carved into every chord played that night. Her granddaughter, Emmy Russell, took the stage with tears in her eyes. Reba spoke about the day Loretta comforted her after a miscarriage. Carly Pearce called her country music's heart. And when the crowd stood to sing Coal Miner's Daughter, it wasn't just nostalgia. It was a hymn, a thank you, a goodbye. Loretta Lynn didn't just break barriers, she broke silence. She gave women a voice, poor girls a dream, and country music a soul it hadn't heard before. And even now, long after the lights dimmed and the curtains fell, her voice still echoes through the hollers, the radios, and the hearts of those who needed her most. She was still woman enough.